Hello, today we're going to be discussing section 7.1, which is on adjacent and vertical angles. Our essential question for the day is, what can you conclude about the angles formed by two intersecting lines? We're going to start by simply just naming these angles that are shown. When we move forward through this chapter, we're going to need a way to refer to various angles that we're coming across. And so naming them will be very helpful when we get to those more complicated figures. We can't just say the red angle or the blue angle. When our figures become a little bit more complicated, we're going to need a more specific way to refer to it. So in our first angle, this red angle, we are going to name it using the letters that are shown. What we do when we're naming an angle is we list the letters in order to outline the angle that is shown. So for example, if I wanted to name this red angle, I could outline it by starting at the A, going to B, and ending at C. So I could draw this angle by starting here at A, going through to B, and ending at C. Now notice I didn't create any marks that weren't already there. I could not outline this angle by starting at A, going to C, and ending at B. That doesn't make any sense because that's a different mark than is already in the picture. So to name this angle, I may either start at A or C. So first off, I'll go ahead and start at A. I'm going to start at A. That's the first letter in the name of this angle. After that, I'm going to go to B. B would be the second letter in this name of the angle. And then I'm going to end at C. And C is the third letter in the name of my angle. So I could call this angle A, B, C. B, the point, or what we call the vertex, this point here is called our vertex, is always going to be in the center of your name. Now we also do need to include a symbol telling us what this ABC thing is. So to name the angle, we're going to include the symbol that means angle, which looks like this. Now you may also see me write the symbol using a little arc across the angle. Both of those mean the same thing, angle ABC. Now keep in mind that that's not the only way to name the angle. If you want, you can start at C instead. So if I start at C, again, I'm not allowed to jump over to A because that's not part of my angle that's already drawn. I'm only allowed to stay on existing lines. So I would start at C, go to B, and end at A. So the name of this angle would be CBA. And notice that that vertex B is still in the middle. The point of your angle, or the vertex, is still in the middle. I include my angle symbol so that we know what it is we are talking about. We are talking about an angle. For the second blue angle to the left, I can start at X, go to H, and end at P. That would give me angle X, then H, then P. And notice your vertex is still in the middle. The point will always be in the middle. Option 2, you can start at P, go to H, and up to X. So that would give me angle P, H, X. For this third one, I could go ahead and start at W. Now, no, I can't start at K, because if I go from K to W back to B, that doesn't outline my angle. So I'm going to go ahead and start at one of the end points, W, go to K, and end up at B. So WKB, and this is angle WKB. Notice again, that vertex K is in the middle. The point is in the middle. Option 2 would be, instead of starting at W, let's start at B. If I start at B, then I would go left to K and up to W. This would give me angle BKW. Go ahead and take just a second to try naming the black angle in two different ways on your own. For this angle, you may start at G, go down to S, and over to C, and that would give you angle GSC. Or you can start at C, go over to S, and up to G, which would give you angle GCSG. And remember that that point of your angle is always in the middle. The G and the C will be the ones first or last. Now we're going to be going into a little bit more of an advanced idea regarding angles. Our first definition is this idea of adjacent angles. This word adjacent means either next to or touching. So if we're looking at adjacent angles, that means they are angles that are either next to each other or even touching each other. So two angles are adjacent angles when they share a common side. Make sure you fill that in your notes, please. They share a common side and they have the same vertex. And this word vertex, we referred to on the last slide, just means point. They have the same side and the same vertex. So for example, if I have an angle, I'll do it in red. If I draw an angle here, the vertex would be this point at the edge of my angle. And the sides are the two lines that extend out from that vertex. So an angle that is adjacent would have its point at the same place and would also use one of those two sides. So for example, maybe I can use this side here with a blue angle. The blue angle uses the same side and it also has a point right here at the same place the red angle does. So maybe my angle looks something like this. Those two angles are adjacent because they both use that same side that's in between them and they have a point at the same place. So looking in my example here, angle 1 and angle 2. I'm looking at these two angles and I will outline them in red to make them a little easier to see. Angle 1 is here and angle 2 is to the right of it. Those two both use this side in the middle, so they have a common side, and they both have a point at the same place, or their vertex is at the same place. Therefore, 1 and 2 are adjacent angles. Now, on another note, let's look at angles 2 and 4, and I'm going to outline these. Angle 2 is here. And angle 4 is here. So I'm looking at these two angles. Those two do share a vertex. They both have their point or their vertex at the same place in the center. However, they don't share a common side. If I look at this side of 2, angle 4 does not use that side at all. If I look at this side of 2, angle 4 does not use that side at all. In fact, there's all this space in between the two angles. They're not adjacent because they're not sharing a side. So angle 2 and 4 are not adjacent. There's one other type of angle relationship that we have that we're going to talk about today, and that is the idea of vertical angles. Two angles are vertical angles. Fill that in your notes, please. Two angles are vertical angles when they are opposite angles formed by the intersection of two lines. What this means, in easier words, is that if I have two straight lines and they cross, that's what the word intersection means. They just cross. Two lines that cross. Vertical angles are opposite angles in that figure. So if I were looking at this angle here, an angle that's vertical to that angle would be straight across from it, not adjacent, not touching, but straight across from it. So that would be this angle below. Now you may also look at the left and the right. So if I'm talking about this angle on the left, an angle that is vertical to that angle would be straight across from it. So going straight across this x, the vertical angle would be the angle to the right. So those two are vertical angles. Looking in our diagram, I have two lines that intersect, or two lines that cross, and they form an X. If I'm looking at angles 1 and 3, they're already outlined for you with this single mark. Angle 1 and angle 3, those two are across an x from each other. Looking at angle 1, if I just go straight across the x, I end up at angle 3. Because of this relationship, that means that angles 1 and 3 are vertical angles. Similarly, if you're looking at angles 2 and 4, if I start with angle 4, I'm going to notate it with 2 marks this time, and I go straight across the x, I land at angle 2. So therefore, angle 2 and 4 are also an example of vertical angles. Make sure you fill those terms in your notes, please. One very important thing that we know about vertical angles, in this blank above your figure, please write that vertical angles are congruent angles, meaning they have the same measure. They are exactly the same as one another. So if I am looking at angle 1 and angle 3, we already said that these are vertical angles, so that means they are exactly the same as one another. And they even look the same. If we're looking at how wide angle 1 is, angle 3 looks like it's about the same size as angle 1. Similarly, if I'm looking at angle 4 and angle 2, I can see that those look like they're pretty much the same size, and they in fact are exactly the same size. Congruent, this word congruent, means exactly the same size and shape. And to make our writing just a little bit easier, we're going to go ahead and use the symbol that means congruent instead of having to write that long word out every time. And that is an equal sign with just a little squiggle over the top. That means the word congruent, which is exactly the same size and shape. On our next slide, we're going to first name a pair of adjacent angles. So here is an example of a figure that's just a little bit more complicated. So we need a way to refer to the angles you're talking about. So in this diagram, first thing I'm going to do is pick the angles I want that are adjacent. Let's say I want them to touch at BD. I want them to both use this side, BD. Okay, so then my choices are, I could go angle ED, and that would bring me to this red angle that I've just outlined, EBD. And I could pair that angle with CBD. Notice how they're both using that line that I covered up in red but used to be black. They're both using this line that points straight down. So therefore, my first angle starting at E, going to B, ending at D, so angle EBD, and angle, I'm going to start at C, go to B, and end at D to outline this angle to the right. Angle CBD. Those are adjacent angles because they both use that line that points straight down. Now for the second, in part B, we're going to name a pair of vertical angles. So what I need here are two lines that intersect. So first thing I'm going to do are find my two lines. This little part here does not create a line because it stops. If it were a line, it would go out in the other direction, but it does not. So that cannot be used in my vertical angle example here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of wipe that out for a second. If I get rid of that, what we can see now are two lines that cross. So I'm going to pick an angle. My first angle is going to be the angle ABF. I just picked any angle I wanted, angle ABF. Then I go back to my figure and I look directly across the X. And I see this angle here, starting at C, going to B, ending at D. So angle ABF and angle CBD are vertical angles. And that's all for today. We'll go ahead and finish this lesson later. Thanks so much for watching.